35 years on the bench in Providence have brought me face to face with tears, excuses, miracles, and the kind of truth that quietly catches you off guard. Before that morning was over, a 12-year-old boy would stand in my courtroom, look me straight in the eye, and confess to something that carried the power to alter his sister's future completely. The light through those courtroom windows was soft and gray, the particular shade of a Rhode Island morning that makes everything a little more honest. Inspector Quinn was at his customary spot. The clerk worked through the files at her steady pace. People in the gallery carried that familiar combination of worry and impatience I have witnessed thousands of times. Some arrive furious, some embarrassed, some frightened. And every now and then, someone steps through those doors carrying something far heavier than a citation. That was the feeling that settled over me the moment I first laid eyes on her. She could not have been more than 19. Thin and tired, hair pulled back in a hurry. The coat she wore had seen too many winters, and in her hand she held one of those plain white envelopes people bring when they have gathered every dollar they could find. Standing close beside her was a little girl with 2 neat braids and an inhaler clipped to her pocket. 1 row behind sat a boy of about 12, holding himself upright through sheer force of will. This young woman kept glancing back at that boy, and the boy kept his eyes fixed on the floor as though he had swallowed something too large and too dark to look away from. 35 years of reading people told me this case was not going to be settled by the number on a parking violation. The clerk read the file. 3 violations tied to a silver Toyota Corolla on Broad Street, damage to city property, failure to secure a vehicle, leaving the scene of an incident involving a parking meter. Total owed more than $600. For certain people, $600 is an inconvenience. For others, it is food on the table, rent, medicine. Good morning. What is your name? She answered quietly, almost apologizing for being present. Elena Rivera, Your Honor. Were you driving the car? Her fingers tightened around the envelope. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The answer was caught between fear and loyalty. Finally, I told the officer it was my fault. When someone answers a direct question with an entirely different sentence, there is almost always a story living behind it. Ms. Rivera, were you driving that vehicle? Her eyes filled with tears. The little girl reached quietly for her sleeve, and before Elena could find her answer, the boy in the second row came to his feet so suddenly that his chair scraped hard across the floor. No, he said. She was not. It was me. The air seemed to leave the room. The clerk went still. Inspector Quinn turned his head. Every person in the gallery stopped everything and simply stared. I looked at that boy, and he looked back at me with the kind of courage that only surfaces when fear has finally lost its grip. Come up here, son, I said. Elena whispered his name. Mateo, no. He walked forward anyway. His sneakers had the toes worn down to white. His hands were trembling, but his chin stayed up. How old are you? 12. And what do you mean when you say it was you? He swallowed hard. The car rolled because of me. Do not make my sister pay for what I did. The courtroom went silent in that particular way it does when people stop seeing a legal matter and begin seeing a family. I turned to Elena. She was not denying him, not angry. She looked like someone who had carried a tremendous weight so long that even its exposure felt something close to relief. Is this your brother? Yes, Your Honor. And the little girl? My sister, Lucia. Young man, tell me exactly what happened. He drew in a breath I could hear from the bench. Lucia could not breathe that night. My sister had just brought her home from the clinic. There was a blue bag on the front seat with the nebulizer equipment. Lucia started coughing badly upstairs. Elena ran back into the apartment to get her shoes and call my mother. She told me to go get the blue bag from the car. I opened the door, climbed in, and hit something. The car started rolling. He stopped. His voice had fractured. Take your time, I said. He wiped his face. It rolled a little way and hit the meter. Elena ran after it. She pulled Lucia down the stairs. She was trying to stop the car and help Lucia at the same time. What did you tell the police? Elena answered. That it was my fault. Why? She looked at Mateo, then at Lucia, then back at me, because it was my responsibility. I will carry that sentence for the rest of my life, not because it was legally precise, but because of what it revealed about her character. There are people who run from blame even when it belongs entirely to them. And there are people who step directly into blame because their love for someone else is larger than their fear of what follows. The clerk confirmed $420.37, not enough to cover the full balance. That amount does not simply appear in a household running on the edge. That is skipped meals, overtime shifts, a 19-year-old surrendering her safety margin just to stand before a court and say, "Please do not make this worse." In the file, I found something attached behind the notice, a photocopy of a hospital wristband and pharmacy receipt Elena had submitted with an earlier continuance request. The date on the wristband matched the date of the incident. The receipt was for albuterol solution. I turned to Mateo. "Why did you decide to tell the truth today?" Something in his eyes reminded me of the children I grew up alongside in Federal Hill. Proud kids, poor kids, kids who learned far too early that survival and guilt tend to share the same address. He said because she was going to pay for something I did, and because she told me it was okay if she paid, but it is not okay. Where is your mother? She works nights cleaning offices. She could not afford to miss another shift. And your father? She lowered her eyes. He passed away 3 years ago. The prosecutor had stayed quiet through most of this. A good prosecutor understands that justice is not a competition to produce the harshest possible result. I asked whether any witness had actually observed Ms. Rivera operating the vehicle. No, Your Honor, only her own statement at the scene. I turned to Inspector Quinn. He said nothing, but his expression said everything. After all our years together, I could read that look without difficulty. It said, "This family is telling the truth." "Were the keys in the ignition?" Elena answered. "Yes, Your Honor." I had run upstairs for less than a minute. Lucia was wheezing badly. I left them in because I was panicking. Panic makes people do things they would never otherwise do. It does not make them bad people. A large portion of the people who stand before me are not criminals at heart. They are overwhelmed, attempting to manage